Hi, this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to miamighostchronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogman, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. Just go to mppelliser.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. So, how's everybody doing? Good? Good, I hope. Anyway, even though the show's a little bit staggered, Happy New Year. Happy New Year 2025. Yay! And boy, are we off to the races in the new year. I'm telling you, it's like I remember I stayed my husband, he fell asleep. I made dinner for New Year's Eve. I made a nice dinner and he like kind of like passed out like one of those deals. And I remember I woke him up a little bit like after like Happy New Year and he's like "Arr." And then afterwards, all these things came, that were going on as far as with these attacks in New Orleans and well on the and let's put it this way, I was kind of like so wigged out because to be honest with you, I wasn't watching the news. It was one of those things I was watching. I don't know. I was looking at all these different holiday movies, programs, different stuff. And I looked at that. I think it was because I got something either on my Twitter feed or something. Something came across my phone, and I was like, "What? What is that?" And I wigged out so much that I know my one of my kids, he was him and his wife, they were with the in-laws, so I didn't worry about them. But my daughter, boyfriend, and then my other son, it was like I knew they were gonna go to some place to have a party, somebody's. But I was like, I called up my son. This was like I'm not kidding you, like a no, I'm sorry, I take it back. He called me like at 1 in the morning. Hey mom, because of course, happy New Year. Yeah, yeah. I go, where are we? He goes, no, I'm gonna go to pick up his sister, and I'm gonna. I said, do me a favor, please text me. And I didn't. I was like so normally. I mean, don't worry. I care. I worry about them all the time. New Year's or not, I worried about them. Um, and I said, just text me when you guys get home, please. And he's like, okay. Sure enough, around five something. And as a matter of fact, he slept at his sister's house, which I'm very glad. But I was like, what in the world is going on? Come on. We just started the new year. What is this? You know? And yeah, it's like someone I don't know. That's just my commentary. I always do the progressive insurance thing and talk about the weather, but it's like no, for the last couple of days, I'm like more like uh I hope this is not what the rest of 2025 is going to be like. Please, please. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you what, going into the paranormal or discussions about stuff like this that I usually talk about, it's like, man, I'm ready to relief. Oh, ghost, who cares? UFO, cryptid, great. Demonic possession, all right. I, because it's like, don't get me wrong. I believe in, reality is reality. And, I'm not going to like hide my head, but ooh, it's like, all right, like none of this other stuff scares me. Doesn't keep me up. This other stuff does. So it's like, yeah, one of those deals that hopefully things will get better as and I always say, and I've said it before, 25 years ago, we were at Y2K. Remember, Y2K was the end of civilization because computers couldn't handle going to 2000. Remember? And we had all these movies with Arnold and the other ones with the meteor. I mean, and I remember it was like, okay, nothing happened. And it was like
Wow, these people were off 25 years. It's like, it's crazy. In other words, all that hype, as I remember, and nothing happened. But it was like, you look back at it now and it seems so, I'm going to use the word nostalgic, but I'll use the word nostalgic. It's nostalgic because at the end, after all the hype and Hollywood made a lot of money and everything, nothing happened. Obviously, the following year we had 9/11. That's totally different. But around the Y2K thing, banks will close because the computers and, believe me, unless you were there and as an adult, I was like, okay, well, when we wake up January 1st and there will be no type of, the computers will shut off and banks will close. Well, nothing happens. But yeah, it's like, and I'm doing one of those retrospectives, like, man, Y2K, I could do a Y2K now by comparison. That'd be like, okay, that sounds like fun. Sure. So, so I'm telling you, it's, let's, as a matter of fact, let's get on to the good part, which is who the guest is today. This gentleman, he's been here before. His name is Chuck Bergman, and he is a third generation psychic medium. He was born in Jacksonville, Florida, and he discovered his psychic abilities at a young age, but chose to keep his aspect of himself private. During his 32-year career as a police officer in Salem, Massachusetts, after retiring from the police force, he embraced his gift fully and became a public figure in the field of psychic mediumship. He's had television appearances on the A&E channel and the Biography channel, including his own pilot program, Psychic Search, which has helped bring attention to his abilities. Chuck's also been a frequent guest on live radio shows like Coast to Coast AM, discussing his experiences and insights as a psychic medium. Uh, Now, beyond his media presence, Chuck actively uses his psychic abilities to assist police departments worldwide in locating missing persons and solving murder cases. He's co authored a book titled The Everything Guide to Evidence of the Afterlife and publishes autobiography Psychic Cop, which he shares his journey and experiences. Currently, he resides in Middleburg, Florida, and continues to offer private and group sessions as well as phone readings via Skype to clients around the globe. His passion lies in educating people about the continuation of life beyond death, using his psychic abilities to offer comfort and guidance to those seeking connection and understanding. Help me welcome him. How are you doing today, Chuck?
Doing great, Marlene, and I'd like to thank you for having me back on.
No,
Been
on the
looking forward to this.
contrary.
It's always a treat.
I know, no, it's great. It's fantastic. I'm very glad to speak to you again. And we were talking, of course, before we started to roll about the weather. I came with my audience. I don't know if you've seen that Progressive Insurance, where they say they talk about the progressive people, the become like their parents, and they talk about the dew point and all that. And then I
Yeah.
say, that's why I say I'm doing the Progressive Insurance thing, and we were talking about the weather. We were doing a weather comparison, winter, like, oh, because we're both Floridians now, but there was a time that you lived up in the Northeast, you were saying, and it's the different
Yeah, a
altogether.
big difference between that and here in
Yes.
Florida. In fact, I kind of laugh when I hear the
Yeah, I
people
know.
complaining about the cold or
Yeah, I
even the
know.
driving because it's foggy out. It's
Oh yeah, man.
like
Around
you
here
have no
lately, it's been
idea.
very foggy. I know. I know. It's
and,
been
and I
windy
think
sweat.
you summed it up with the word black ice. If you've
Yeah,
never
black.
driven
Well,
on it,
oh no, I
it's
admit it. I'm a wimp. I'm a wimp when it comes to that. I'm like, I mean, I'm a good driver and everything. Like, and lately, like you were talking about, lately we've had like this really dense fog that usually once the sun comes up, the fog will disperse. And the other day I was driving around, it was like 11 a.m. and it was like we still had fog going on. It was very overcast, but I was like, what is this? But yeah, one of those things is like, man, I probably pretty soon they're going to look me up. Do you want to do a commercial for Progressive? Because all you do is talk about the weather.
why not?
But
I want to I got to say
yes.
something about the fog, though. You just triggered a memory. When I was in the Navy many, many years ago, I was
Mm-hmm.
stationed aboard an aircraft carrier out of Mayport, which is in Jacksonville,
Mm-hmm.
and we had a Dependence Day cruise where you could have your family come on board, and they'd take us out probably, I don't know, 100 miles or whatever, and do an air show and all that stuff, for the families. So we went out, and the air show lasted for about a half an hour, and then a heavy fog rolled in. We had all those people on board, and just the men alone, the carrier would have 5,000 sailors,
Wow.
men working
Hmm.
on board. Now add all the families and their
That's a lot of
children.
people.
Well, the fog kept us at sea for 3 full days.
What?
Yes.
What?
Yeah. So when you mentioned fog, I went, oh, yeah, that was really
So what
quite a
happened?
story.
Because they couldn't, it was like, no, we can't, we got to stay here until this thing clears up.
Yeah. And I guess they couldn't even come back into port and dock because the fog was that bad.
Right. They needed
And
the
even though
visual.
it finally let up after 3 days.
And it's really funny because really Florida is not, you don't think of Florida as being a foggy state. You think of, San Francisco. And I remember one time I was in Pismo Beach. I was visiting some friends and I was fog out there. But nobody ever thinks of there being foggy out here. Like we're not known for foggy state, but it goes to show you. Interesting. So I
There,
imagine, what did you all do with all these people running around on the
it
ship?
was different because, for 3 days we had to feed them. They needed, showers. They needed food. They needed, life.
Let me ask you, where did they sleep? I know this is getting off the subject, but because I imagine, don't you guys have berths only for the sailors?
Normally, yeah, but we had to kind of give that up and let them use it. And you'd see guys sleeping in the corner with a pillow or whatever, and
That must
we
have
were
been a long
improvising,
three
but it
days
was,
for you
it was an
guys.
amazing experience.
I bet. I bet. Yeah. No, it's one of like, yeah. I've been one of these people that people don't realize, when the fog is really thick, even on the road, your visibility, if anybody brakes too hard in front of you, that, you don't have the ability to see it, unless, of course, the brake lights, but even then, so there, it's one of the, it's like one of those, like, yeah, I'll just stay home.
Stay
No,
home.
stay home, stay home. Yeah, I know. It's and around here, close to where I'm at, we have a couple of main highways where we have a lot of 18-wheelers. And some of these guys, man, they go tearing through here, and it's like those. Even if they want to, they can't do sudden stops, or I've seen some of them as like, have you realized that there's just fog out here? Why are you going so fast? But it is what it is.
That's
Crazy
got to be a
stuff.
rough job. I wouldn't want to do it.
No, I know, I know, I know. I see a lot of these guys, and it's like, oh, I'll tell you what, and I don't know if it's more demand or just less workers, but just about every major company that I can think of has, on their 18-wheelers, they have these, we're hiring, we're hiring,
You're
we're
right.
hiring,
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's just they have more demand or they just don't have enough drivers to do that work anymore. Because,
You're away from the family. I mean, I
yes,
hear the pay is good, but it's not a
yes,
job I would want. I couldn't do it.
yes, I know. And I'm thinking, people don't real well in Florida. Other people, what am I talking about? I see some of these places when you leave Florida and you have these steep roads and inclines and descents, and I'd be like, man, I'd be, especially in bad weather, I'd be like, forget it. I couldn't handle this. Like, okay, some people are meant to be truckers and others are not. And by the way, some of the best ghost story though come from truckers. Truckers, those long distance truckers, sometimes have the best ghost stories of
I've
stuff they've
heard
seen
some.
on the
You're
road,
you're right.
and on their those stops that they make, um and we hear sometimes, because that they have to stop x amount of hours, they can't keep driving through,
Right.
and you'll hear some of them say, hey, sometimes I pull into some of these stops and it's been closed down, but I had to pull over. So you hear these great stories about stuff that happens while they're at these deserted kind of like rest stops that they have. They have excellent, or stuff that they see on the road, like, you know like some hitchhiker, that ghostly hitchhiker thing.
I,
They have excellent stories. Let
I
me ask. Yeah, go ahead.
was going to say I did a strange reading one night for a man. I forget where he was from, but he was a truck driver, and
Okay.
but he was telling me the story how he was working one night. It was late in the morning. He crossed over a bridge, and then he
Okay.
felt like raindrops inside the cab while he's driving the truck. And he thought, like,
Okay.
where's that water coming from?
That's
And he
weird.
looked down and he could see it, on his shirt. He could see,
Right.
like sprinkles of water. And he had no idea where it was coming from. Anyway, he pulled into a rest area, put on all the lights, He looked around. The only thing he could figure out is he didn't realize it, but he was crying. Now, and I thought,
What?
and I'm hearing this story, and I'm going, where is he going to go with this?
Right.
Turns out that he didn't even know why, and he picked up his phone. He called his wife and all that. Found out later at the same time he's crying and didn't know why. Back home, his wife had passed away.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, wow, what an eerie concept, that
Yes.
they're separated like that, yet he felt her passing
Right.
to
On
the point.
some
I think she had been ill for a while, in
spiritual.
fairness. I think she'd been ill,
Right.
but
But
still,
still.
he had no idea while he's driving the truck. She had
Yeah. You
passed
know how
away.
people develop like an emotional psychic bond?
They do.
Same
They
thing,
do.
you know. But that thing about him crying, like that, even he, like it's almost like on a soul level, he knew something had happened.
Yeah. And then,
And
but when I'm hearing him tell me the story, it's like, where is he going with this? And then when he told me that part of it, and then my job was to bring her through and giving him, give him more
well, let me ask.
messages. So
Well, exactly. And was he that? That's got to be difficult, even if that person is ill. That you're not there when they pass. You see what I'm saying? He had to
sure,
let her
yeah.
there. Yeah, that's got to be a tough thing.
And he said the crying, he didn't even realize he was physically crying, and yet the tears.
Right.
So
That's why I'm saying at what level, maybe of course, he's all intent because he's paying attention to the road, but on some soul level, he knew that
he
something
knew,
had
I'm sure,
happened.
yes.
That's very, very interesting. Let me ask you, Chuck. Well, I'm sure you've had people that have had that experience where they've seen, and I'm sure you've heard of it. They've seen somebody that they don't know at the moment that that person has passed, but then they see him like at a certain place or time where he's like, I know I must. Where are like? Wait a minute, what are you doing here? That kind of thing where it's almost a last goodbye, but they're unaware. They learn later that this person has passed on.
I can buy into that. Yeah. I've not in that format, but I can buy into that.
Yes, that people
I think
like
that,
that
and
last
I've
goodbye kind of
seen,
deal.
yeah, I've seen spirits come. I get to see them on occasion, hear them,
Mm-hmm.
and I've had it to the point where there's no difference between looking at that soul
Right.
and looking at them in the body. It's just absolutely the same.
Right.
The
That they're
one
very
reading I
solid
did.
looking.
Oh yeah, I did one where Ray Charles appeared after his passing,
Oh my God, what was that?
and without getting into the whole reading, what the interesting part was, I didn't know it at the time, but the two women who booked the reading were Ray
Uh-huh.
Charles's sisters.
Oh, and you must have been thinking, what is Ray Charles doing here?
Exactly, and I'm looking at him like I'm looking at a real person, but in my mind, I knew it. This is an image. This is a ghost or whatever.
Right.
And I'm still trying to talk with them and give them their reading, but I kept looking at Ray Charles, who's talking to me and
Uh-huh.
using my name. He's saying, "Hey Chuck,
Right.
do this, do that." And in my mind, I'm going, "No, I can't acknowledge you, or they're going to think I'm crazy." So finally, I
Right.
said, "I got to tell you, Ray Charles is sitting here," and they freaked out. And then I found out that one was his actual sister,
Right.
and the other was as like a stepsister. So,
you, I imagine it's like, well, I better let this go and let's see where this goes. They're either going to think I'm crazy, but it is what it
that's
is.
the problem with what we do. You got to be a little, not everyone's going to
Right.
buy
It's like,
into it. And I
yeah,
guess I'm even skeptical because I didn't buy into it right away, but I knew what I
hmm
was seeing and hearing. And it's like,
right.
either I'm going nuts here, or,
Let me tell you something. That must have convinced him really good right there when you said that,
yeah.
because
And,
that,
one thing I want to say too is I meet the most wonderful people doing what I do, people I never would have had a chance to meet.
hmm
And with the sister, Lovey was her name, is her name. She even brought over the Ray Charles family photo album to
wow.
prove that she's in
Right.
pictures with Ray Charles. So I would believe her, but I'm wanting
Right.
her
Like,
to
I'm just
believe.
not making this up. Just not,
I'm
I
yeah,
mean,
I'm wanting her to believe me that I'm really looking at him. And
right,
I
right,
was
right.
looking at her mother who had just passed. So it
Oh,
was an amazing afternoon. I'll put it that way. But to sit there and turn the pages and look at Ray Charles and in his
The
home.
family photo album. Wow.
And by the way, he did live, or the mother lived in Jacksonville, not far
Yeah.
from where I live.
Wow.
She even told me the name of the street and the house that they're still in, where the mom used to live.
Mm-hmm.
So it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, Jacksonville has a long history, quite a long history. Jacksonville's an old city. It is. But let me tell you, the that's great. Let me talk. Have Do you ever, or if somebody whether I imagine whether it's a reading or not, do you ever see somebody come to you like in their death state, like what they look like when they passed, even if it's kind of like wow, or do they
On
always look
occasion, they
like
do. Typically, they come back like 30 years younger.
really
They come
okay?
back vibrant and young and no belly like I've got. None of that.
Yeah, like
It's
yeah. This was me
the-
at the best moment.
at their favorite moment in life, and even the hair color, everything about them, much younger.
Okay.
Um, but I will say this. I don't want to be odd about it, but I had a little boy come in once,
Mm-hmm.
and almost like a cartoon, his head was flat like a pancake, just flat.
Wow.
And I'm looking at him as I'm seeing him and going, I don't know what's going on here, but I'm going to go along with it. And the funny thing is, another friend of mine who's also a medium, he saw exactly what I saw, but he couldn't hear what I was hearing from the little boy.
Okay.
So anyway, a few hours later, after the boy kind of stepped aside, the mother came over for a reading. And I said, wait a minute, is this a little boy? And described him and everything. And she said, yes. I didn't tell her about the flattened head because I didn't
Right.
want to upset her.
Sure.
And then she told me, she said, he was a paper boy and delivering papers, 11, 12 years old. And an oil truck didn't see him and backed over him. And
Oh.
obviously, head trauma. So,
Right. 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 Right.
it all made sense, but it was nothing I wanted to relay to the mom to give her,
Of course not.
reminder of it. But it was almost in cartoon form that while he's
Mm-hmm.
talking to me, the head was compressed. And I
Right.
thought, and at the time I had no clue what it
Yeah,
was
you would have thought,
representing.
okay, where is this gonna? Because this
So,
was prior to her arriving. You're saying,
yeah,
right? That you
when
saw
I first saw him, yes, about
exactly.
well, here's the odd thing. I was giving one reading and I kept bringing up the little boy to the gentleman that I was
Oh my
reading,
God. Okay.
who
And
happened
he's
to be
like,
an officer that I worked with.
uh-huh.
He's going, no, I don't know this kid. I don't know him. I don't know him. I even named the street that the kid lived on.
Oh wow.
And he's going, no, no, no. I said, okay. And then 6 hours later, the mom comes over for the reading, and I had no idea what she wanted. And it was for that little boy. And he actually told me, he said, I came in earlier. I wanted to see how it worked. And I've never had that before from
He's,
a,
I'm gonna test you. I'm gonna see.
yeah,
That's
basically he
great.
wanted to know what his role was, how it worked. And, you
Okay.
know, and then
Right.
I even put the name of the street out to the mom. I said, did this happen on so and so street? She said, yeah, that's where we live. So,
Wow.
the things I've learned and witnessed are just
That's
amazing.
incredible. Chuck, you were when you were a police officer, you worked up in Salem, Massachusetts.
Salem, the Witch City, yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, was that a weird place? I mean, I've been to Salem a couple of times, but obviously, a couple of days, not like lived
Yeah,
there.
you're not going to see it like a person living there. And
Right, 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 right.
I was friends with Lori Cabot. She would,
Yes, I know who.
she's got the garb, the hat, and the robes and all that,
Yes.
and
Uh-huh.
very well known walking around town. But I would go to lunch on occasion at the restaurant, and anyone
Right.
from Salem would know Red's sandwich shop, which was next to the police station. I would be sitting there with a couple of my buddies, and in would come Lori Cabot, the witch, sit at the
Hmm.
table with us. So we're in our police uniform. She's in her witch,
What a
and
great
I'm
picture.
sure tourists are walking and going,
Huh?
what is this? Like, what's going on in this city?
That's great. That's great.
Oh,
But
I
let me
got to
ask you,
tell you
did you
one.
see weird because I know that Salem has their own, if you want to call it tourist thing, built around the Salem witch thing. But did you ever have like weird stuff happen with some of the residents? Because it's like, okay, just because of like, it's just that I imagine the vibes there have got to be very unusual.
I would say, if anything else, it was more of a freedom that I didn't experience when I lived in Florida.
Okay.
I would go up there, and no matter what they were into, people were very accepting up there. Like if that's what you
Okay.
want to do, go ahead and do it. And if you want to
Right.
walk around town with, a cat on your shoulder and different things going on, just do it. They didn't care. It was a total freedom that I don't see now that I'm back home again.
So let me ask you something. So in other words, if you were walking around, I'm a cop and I'm psychic, it'd be like, that's good. That's okay.
Yeah, they'd be okay with it.
Sure. Exactly. Right. Because people kind of like, you always have this I don't know if you want to call it this personification of the psychic, and usually he's not dressed as a cop, It's like, no, 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 no. No, not the
Yeah,
same thing.
the two don't really go together. They really don't.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
And
Let me ask
that's
you
kind of one reason well, the main reason I went with the book that I wrote, my
mm-hmm.
autobiography, was The Psychic Cop.
Yeah.
But it had to do with one morning, just as I was getting into mediumship and learning
Mm-hmm.
about it, because I didn't believe in it at the
Yeah.
time. I think I was in my very early 30s. But I
Okay.
heard a voice, and once I don't even get to hear this voice, but maybe once every 10 years, it'll come in with a very brief message. And on this one particular morning, I'll admit I was on my way to the donut shop to get a coffee and
Oh,
donut.
here I'm
You know,
showing the
there you go.
I'm showing the yeah, your the these are your books.
Yeah, good
And
job.
when what you were doing, yeah. But anyway, continue with your story, Chuck.
Yeah, so the voice came in and said, out of nowhere, here it is, like 5:30 in the morning. The sun is just starting to come up. I'm on my way to the coffee shop, and it almost sounded like it came over the police radio. It had like a
Mm-hmm.
tinny sound to it.
Right.
And all it was is a very short sentence. He just said, "You will be known as the psychic cop." And I'm driving. At first, I looked at the radio, like, did that come over the radio? And then I'm even looking in the rear view mirror behind me because I'm thinking, is that someone in another cruiser with the PA on making
Right.
fun of me, giving me a hard time or whatever? But
Right.
it came from somewhere above. So later on, when I did start writing the book, I said, I've got to name it that. I
Sure.
felt the urge. I've got to do it.
I can
But you're
imagine
right. The
that
two don't normally go together. You hear psychic and cop. And I want
yeah,
to say this.
did it ever come in handy when you were being a cop?
Yes,
I mean, in other
yes.
words, you paid attention to it?
Oh, I absolutely paid attention to it. As I moved, up the as my career moved on,
Mm-hmm.
we moved into a new station with modern technology. I was the computer analyst, so I was very aware of the Y2K issue. We were
Yeah,
really
okay, there
worried
you
about
go.
that,
Mm-hmm.
and I would just people would ask me about what I'm doing and is it real and all that. And it was tough. It was hard. And I gave many of them readings that were very accurate. Many officers, I'd give
Right.
them a reading with the agreement that I wouldn't tell anyone that I gave them a reading.
Right.
And even though it was Salem, people were still shying away from it
Sure.
or didn't want to associate with it or whatever. But I think you can tell from my enthusiasm, I welcome it with open arms.
Yeah, you were the in-house psychic. It's like,
Yeah, I was, and didn't really use it on cases. I had a warning from the police chief.
really?
Yeah, oh yeah, he called me into the office one day, and because I worked on the computers, I pretty well knew who was doing what and what was going on. But when
Right.
I got called into the chief's office, as he's facing me, his computer was, screen is off to the
Right.
right. But as I walk in the door, it's being reflected on the window behind him.
Right.
I can see. Are you aware of James Van Prague?
Yes, of course.
Okay, he was actually, he and I are actually friends,
Okay.
and he had put me on his website as a talented medium.
Oh, I know where
So
this is
here's the
going.
chief, and someone squealed on me.
I was gonna say, somebody had to tell him. He didn't find that by himself.
Oh, I know he didn't find it by himself. So he's looking at the website. He sees me on it. He calls me in, and now but I'm seeing the reflection. I go, oh, shoot. I know what this is. And he says, we got a problem. He says, you're carrying a gun and you're hearing voices. And it was so much
Yeah.
fun. I turned, and the police patch is a witch on a broomstick.
Right.
That's what they have in Salem. I
Yes.
said, "This is Salem." I said, "What's the problem?"
Like, yeah.
And we did make an agreement. He said, if I want to do that stuff, what I do on my own time, as long as it's
Mhm.
legal, don't worry about it. But I
Right.
couldn't do it on duty or use the department name.
Sure.
But I did use it as a not a crutch. I would because I was in special operations,
Hmm.
I would be part of different events that involved high level crime
Right.
where I could be there while certain suspects are being interviewed.
Okay.
And I would tune in and I would think, this is what I'm getting from information from above. And
Okay.
then later, once everything is cleared, I could go back and look at all the notes and everything else and
Hmm.
find out, was I on target or not? So there was
Right.
something to compare it with, but I didn't aid them in their investigations.
Let me ask you, didn't have any detective come on the slide and go, "Hey, Chuck, come here. I want to talk to you about something." Hey,
Well, the one book you were showing,
yes.
this detective,
Yes.
uh,
Yes.
who retired a few years after I did, I'm in one of the chapters where he talks about a reading that I gave him. So
Really?
it's kind of cool to have one of the detectives say, yeah,
Also, okay. Okay. So, in other words, and what was he? What kind? What division was he in? What was it? Homicide or what? Or was he
well, it was
just in
all
general?
detective vision was just, one group of men.
It was just overall anything that was
Yes.
detective work. Okay.
And whatever they
Okay.
handed you, you had to work on no matter what it was.
Okay. I understand. I understand that. Because I'm thinking sometimes how some departments have specialized detectives. Assaults, and then you'll
We did to a
do.
point where certain cases would go to certain detectives, but for the most part, they were generic. They could all handle everything.
Okay. And I'm thinking, and that's why I asked you because, and I know from what you're telling me, you had switched over to IT where I'm thinking maybe, your boss was thinking if you ever have to go testify in some type of court proceedings, is somebody going to pull out, yeah, yeah, but he's a psychic, or
I
something
know.
like that.
I know.
That's it. Question your veracity or something like that. Like, so yeah, I can
And
see his
it's a
concern.
shame because even now, since I've retired, I've worked on missing children's cases. I've worked on
Hmm.
several murders, and
Okay.
I'm not going to get into the case, but one case that I helped with, the person responsible would have gotten away with the crime, but
Okay.
because of the information I gave to the detectives, he's now
Hmm.
on death row, and he
Excellent.
very, very much deserves, what he got. So
That's great. I love to hear that. And I, now also with the new DNA stuff that they're solving a lot of these cold cases, because they're actually either being able to identify the victim and, because of depending on how if they only found like skeletal remains, sometimes they can't even, and or they're even able to find out now, even if they know, like, oh, this 40-year-old murder, we find out now it was committed by this person, and everybody's died, by the way,
yeah,
but at least, and I hate to use the word closure because I think it's overdone, but I think it's good to for the people that are left behind that they
I would want to
find out what
know if
happened.
I would want the closure if it were my
Yeah,
family member.
yeah, of course.
And I think that's
You
what it
want to
comes
know one
down
way or
to.
the other. Mm-hmm.
They never give up. And they're living with it 24 hours a day.
Sure.
The pain of what happened, and yet the person responsible is going on about their merry business, still
No,
breaking the laws and
it's
doing
really funny
whatever.
because when you read some of these stories, and I was going to ask you about this as a psychic, they kind of do all these sometimes horrible things, and somehow or they just happen to get by. They, because forensics wasn't in place when they were committing the crimes, and I guess something tells them they're getting older, maybe a little bit wiser. So they kind of like towards older age, they kind of have normal lives, right?
They do.
And that's the ones that you ask, the neighbors, and I was like, no, he's a real quiet guy. He has children and grandchildren, and come to find out, this person did horrific crimes, and then they slow down, or they just they almost lead, I don't want to say an exemplary life, but that you would never think, oh, this person did these things. um have you ever come well have you ever come across somebody that they wanted, let's say in the case of a victim's family, that you could tell them, yeah, well, this happened to your loved one, and again, maybe they're wondering, who was the person that did it? Because sometimes you always think of, how sometimes there's these crimes and they always look at the people immediately around the victim. But I imagine that those stranger on stranger things have got to be the most difficult ones, because sometimes there's no connection between the victim and the perpetrator. You
True.
know, there's no love, revenge, hate, money. You took my business. The motivators that you see in some crimes, they're not there.
They're
It's
not
just
there.
um. Have you ever had anything like that where you've had a perpetrator ever come in on any of your readings? You have to say they're
I
sorry.
have. Yeah, I have. Yes.
You know, because like I said, I wonder. Sometimes I look at these guys. I'm gonna say guys. Don't take it the wrong way, guys. But most of them are guys. I know there's women out
You're
there
right.
that are real
Yeah,
pieces of work.
that's fair to say. True.
Yeah. And I know there's women out there that
Not as
do
many at
certain.
all.
I know, but um, that like I said, they kind of like withdrawn. It's like, are these guys really sorry, or they're just like careful about it and taking care of themselves? But you always wonder, hopefully they're not a psychopath, if they're ever really sorry or feel bad that they did what they did. I don't know. It's like, what happens?
Probably unique to each one that has done what they've done. To me, the hardest thing is whether they do it over the phone or whatever. I remember one I did for the first time. It was on Skype,
Mm-hmm.
and the family had traveled to Germany, where their son has been missing.
Okay.
And this was making national news here in America. In fact, I got put on the case or asked to connect with the family through Nancy Grace, through her people.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And when I contacted the family, I um I didn't know what I was going to be able to. How could I help? This is
Right.
over in Germany. He
Mm-hmm.
went to a concert. Their son went to a concert, never came home, and they wanted to know, is he dead or alive?
Right. In other words, they didn't even know if there was a crime. In other words.
Yeah, and I know what I saw. I said he's definitely not alive. But the
Oh.
good news I could give him, I said he was intoxicated. He slipped on the rocks and went into the water and drowned. And I described the area that I was seeing in Germany, even though I've
Right.
never been there. And it was so weird. The dad said, the area that I'm describing, he was at that location today with police divers who went
Okay.
underwater looking for the body in that area. He
Okay.
said, and there is no body. And I said, he's telling me the body went down to the right. And he said, that's impossible. They talked about that. There is no movement left or right. There is no tide in that area. It's
Right.
what goes in stays in. I said, no, he's telling me he goes down to the right. And I'll never forget it. At the end of the session, and I didn't feel comfortable giving out the information I gave out. The
Right.
dad said, on a one-on-one basis, he said, I hope you're right. Or no, I'm sorry. I hope you're wrong. I hope he's still alive. And I said, if I find out he's still alive, I'll never do this type of reading again. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting, it was accidental. He went into the water. The body's down to the right. It was only 48 hours later, I get a call that the body came up down to the right where I said it was.
Yeah.
So again, it was like, those are so hard on you because you
Yes.
want them to find their son alive, but you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be giving out false information.
How about the other way around, Chuck? Have you ever had people come to you on a missing person? I'm gonna go with a missing person, and they're like at that in that quandary: is this person alive or dead? Whether they've come across and you're telling them no, they're alive. Have you ever had that scenario?
I've had it where they are alive and they do come
Mm-hmm.
back home again. I'll even pick up on when they're coming back. One,
Really?
2, 3
Okay.
months. Yeah, 1, 2, or 3 months. And I'll even tell them why they left and what happened. And sure enough, they come back and I get an email from the family thanking me because up to that point, they thought the family member was gone. They thought they were
Sure, sure,
dead.
sure.
And
Right, which
I
is
can't, that's a
it's
good
got to be
point
the
though.
most difficult thing in the world. I don't even want to think about that.
Yeah, I got a quick story about that because,
Yes.
and it's fair that the people know mediumship. It's not 100% communication. There's room for error in there. And there's one case in particular, I forget where it happened, but a model went on a photo shoot and disappeared. So the family figures she's dead, she's murdered by the photographer.
Mm-hmm.
They have a medium come to town and help them with it. And she said, I'm seeing a small bridge and a little rest area with a huge rock. And where the rock is, that's where her body is. And they described her as very beautiful, blonde, and all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And she was so convincing, the police started digging up that area looking for the body. While they were in the process of digging, they got a radio call that the same model, they found the body on the other side of town. So yeah, so now you're wondering, well, why did the psychic say, this is what happened and everything? Well, as it turned out, as it ended up on the radio and TV and everything, and they're really coming down on the psychic, a retired detective called in and said when he first got on the department, they were working on a similar case where a blonde female model was murdered,
Mm-hmm.
and they found the body at that exact spot where the rock is.
Ooh.
So the psychic was picking up correctly on the
Right.
murder, but it was the wrong murder, even though it was the
So,
same set of circumstances. So
right.
that's what you have to be careful of.
Right. Right. Right.
And when
And
I
this is
heard
the,
that one, I went, "Oh my
you were
God,
like,
you're making
now
it."
I get it.
And
Now
now
I
I
get it.
really got to be careful in what I
Well,
say.
you know what? Because people don't realize, even with DNA, you know how they say, no victim,
True.
no crime, no body, you know. And I'll give you for instance, I work with a search and rescue team where I'm at, and sometimes the efforts are made on behalf of somebody that's gone missing, especially like, the Ocala National Forest, which is very big.
Ooh,
And we're not talking here, most of the time people are thinking this person is lost, you know. But there's been other times where um they suspect something, bad happened, but if they can't locate the body, it's like, well, maybe this person just decided to leave. You see what I'm
sure, and
saying?
they do on
That
occasion.
right. And people don't realize that sometimes even the police departments or other people kind of have their hands tied, and they still have to classify it, maybe even as a missing person, because there's no law against a person saying, I just don't want to be here anymore, I'm going, see ya. And unless there's proof of a crime like blood or foul play, you know, that's, as a matter of fact, there's they had a case where a couple, she was she was into the how's that, she was a stripper, how's that? I'm trying to think of a nice way of saying this, but anyway, she goes with her boyfriend, and I heard this and I was like, are you kidding me? They go to go get firewood over on the edge of the forest of Ocala, but way on the other side, because this is a huge park, you know that, right? Supposedly the story goes that they went out there, and I'm like, man, you couldn't get firewood closer to where you're at. So, and they go off the path, and out here there's something called sugar sand, which is, that sand that if you go off the paved roads, even
Sure,
with
yeah.
a pickup truck, you'll get stuck. Supposedly, this is what happened. He leaves her behind, and the truck goes off to get help. One of those deals. Make a long story short, he comes back the next day. She's nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found. And he's like, well, I left her here. I went to get help. And till today, they can't find her. But they can't prove any, how can I say, any proof of that a crime was committed. And it's one of those deals where,
Sometimes they do walk. Sometimes they get away with it, but
yeah, it's one of those things that without, unless somebody finds something, it's treated, sometimes that's as far as it can go. There's not like, oh, we found, either blood or something, where there was some type of a fight. No. So yeah,
And
sometimes.
I did a very unusual one on that idea where um, I went to Fernandina, which is a little bit
Mm-hmm.
near Jacksonville. You probably know where it is.
Yeah.
And I guess there was a couple. They were engaged. They were going to get married. Had separate homes. So the fiance, the male, was in his home, and a homeless person came to the door saying, I need food, water, whatever you can give me, I will appreciate it." So not only did he take care of him and feed him, but he said, "I've got a trailer on my property. I'll let you live in
Wow.
it. We've got water, heat, all that stuff. I'll let
Right.
you live in it
Mm.
if you'll agree to help me like rake leaves or, do odd jobs around the house." So
Sure.
he said, "Okay." And what it's kind of funny how minor little things can make a case head in a good direction. So anyway, 2 or 3 days go by, and the fiance, the female, knocks on the door, and he's nowhere to be found. Well, he's gone, and so is the homeless person. And it didn't seem right. She said it felt very eerie. So anyway,
Right.
she knew about me. She'd been to a couple of my seminars, and I
Mm-hmm.
went to the area, and she felt like maybe he had been murdered, and he's in the wooded area, and we're going through all these spider webs and snakes and everything else, in the Florida thick woods.
Yes.
And finally, again, I was lucky to hear that voice say, "He's not here. He's in North Carolina." I went, "What?" So I asked her, I said, "Is there any reason your fiance would be up in North Carolina?" She said, "No way. No, absolutely not." And I said, "Well, we're wasting our time." I said, "Let's go back." So we went back and started talking about things and then kind of ended the session. I said, "There's nothing more I can do." I came home and then I get a call 2 days later. She said, "You're not going to believe this, but I just got a telephone call from detectives in North Carolina. What happened was it was her car that the fiance took.
Uh-huh.
Uh, he was murdered, put in the trunk of that car by the homeless guy who drove it up to North Carolina.
Okay.
And she reported it stolen after day number 2.
Mm-hmm.
And because it was stolen, they happened to pull the car over for a minor
Okay.
violation, found out it was stolen out of Jacksonville,
Right.
Fernandina, and they contact her. And she said, "Well, my fiance is supposed to be with that vehicle." They said, "No, we've got another man who was a homeless man."
Oh, oh, oh.
So anyway, one thing I left out is during my vision, while we were searching for the so-called body locally, I said, "I'm in North Carolina, but I'm looking at a white house top on a bit of a hill with a driveway on the left going up the property line. It's very white, like either bright white sand or cement or stone, but it's very white. And that goes up to the house. I want to go across to the other fence line, and that's where you'll find the body." So when I
Okay.
told her that, she gave it to the detective in North Carolina. And he said, "Holy cow, we had to go to the man that was arrested driving the car. They went to his parents' house, which is in North Carolina, in that area.
Uh-huh.
And when they went to the house, he said, his parents live on a bit of a hill, white house, long, long white driveway going up. So the next day, he made a reason to go back to the house. The detective did. And on the other side, near the fence line, he could see a mound of dirt.
Oh.
So now, with that information, he was able to get a search warrant. They came back, they dug up the body. They never would have had
That's
the body if it weren't for the reading, if it weren't for the
exactly.
information.
Exactly.
I think it would have been one of those things that just would have gone by the
So let me ask you
wayside.
something. In essence, I guess he wanted to go back home and he said, well, I got to kill somebody if I want to get this car. I mean, one of those deals.
I believe he was already murdered, in this area, and then the guy
Okay.
threw him in the trunk or whatever, drove up there, and that's when he got caught.
Did he ever say why he killed him?
I never got
And
to
it's
talk
really,
to
and,
him or
and the
anything.
reason why I ask is this man is being very kind. You see what I'm saying?
That's the part that bugs me about the whole.
Yeah.
It makes you not want to help people that are
Oh no.
sadly in need of true help.
Well, over in Daytona Beach, that, across that, oh, what's the name of that? It's one of the older cemeteries. It's right across from the biker bar. I can't remember what the name of it is.
Oh, come on. Do you know how many biker bars there are?
No, but there's one there that's real boots. So, anyway, as a matter of fact, I got trapped in there. I'll do this story real quick. But anyway, many years ago, I knew one of the girls, as a matter of fact, that she's passed away, that she used to do the cemetery tours.
Okay, yeah.
Right? And because this is like the old cemetery of Old Daytona, and it's right across the street from a very old, and it'll come to me, is it Boot something, oh, Marlene. Anyway, she told me that she had learned a lot about, there was an older guy who used to be like the caretaker for the cemetery, right? Because he says, this is so old, all the families, anybody that does maintenance is, for their family, they're dead or they moved, and he helped, same thing. He helped one of the homeless guys. Next thing you know, like, hey, same thing. I'll give you a place to stay. Just help me out a bit. I guess the gentleman was getting older, that kind of deal.
Yeah.
And it's not really a huge cemetery. It's not like one of those huge cemeteries. It's a pretty small. This is like the original one that you could like walk around. Ended up killing him. The older guy. And and that's. But, one of those same things, the kindness, you repay the kindness by killing the person kind of deal. But anyway, I want to do a quick segue into that. Like about 3 or 4 years ago, I go in there and I would go, you know what? Let me do a real quick tour. I'll take my camera and I'll just do like a little quick mini walking tour. Blah, blah. It was like around, they closed at 5. Okay. And it was like 4:15. I said, I'll run in there and I'll film some of the interesting, because like I said, this is the old Daytona, crypts, graves. Oh, Chuck. I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm keeping an eye on the times, but I'm walking away over there. There's 2 entrances, 2 gates, because it's one of those cemeteries that it's got the sidewalk and it's raised up, and then the rest of the perimeter is in those iron fences.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, oh man, it's 4:45. Let me go walk back. And I come to the first gate and it's locked. And I'm like, well, maybe they just, they're closing. It's 4:45 they close this
No, don't
one.
tell me they locked you in.
Oh, yes, they sure did. So I walk over there. And then I'm like, hey. And there's a couple of them go, oh, don't worry. That happens to us all the time. And I'm like, thanks. So anyway, and by the way, I left my husband. I said, because I parked right across the street. And I said, like, stay here. I'm just going to walk around real quick. I'm calling him on the phone. He's not, I don't know what he was doing. He wasn't paying attention. I'm like, so finally, some of these bar patrons, God bless their heart, they see me like looking out between the bars, like, help. And I was thinking, oh my God, how embarrassing. I'm going to have to call the police to get me out of here. Because they don't have, there was, how some places have plaques that have a phone number, like, hey, call this number.
True,
emergency. Yeah. No, there was no such thing. This was a really like basic, this old cemetery was like, and I guess they see this lady stuck behind. Thankfully, they came over with this tall ladder and got me out of there. Because I was like, this is so embarrassing. I'm trapped inside Daytona Cemetery. I gave them all $20. I said, thank you all very much. Have a beer on me. They were great. I was so embarrassed.
Imagine having to sleep in there or whatever all night.
And no, and it's so funny because the homeless guys, they're on the outside. They're like, don't worry. That happens to us all the time. I guess they go in there and they fall asleep and then they're locked inside. And I'm like, I know you mean well, but you know what? I hadn't planned on spending the night inside here. But yes.
That'd be a night to remember.
Yes, it was. I was like, to believe it or not, though, it was like, I wonder what this call is going to sound like when I call the police department. I'm trapped inside the cemetery. I mean, I'm thinking they might think it's a joke or something, but yeah.
They're probably good. No, we got another one. It's like,
yeah, I know. And it was like, and I get it. Probably this guy closed it up 5 or 10 minutes early because he was, from what I understand, this was like somebody that they paid, like open the gates, at a certain time and make sure by 5 p.m. they're closed. And he was probably getting home. There was nobody else in there. It was just me. And I missed him. He must have gone, come by, closed those, and I'm out of here. And there
Wow.
was a lady with a camera running around inside, as in. But yeah, the point being, though, the original point was the same thing. That gentleman many years ago, same thing. His kindness was repaid by uh by being killed. You know, that thing that, yeah, you got to think. And I know most people do it out of being kind, but sometimes that can backfire,
It can
especially if
backfire. You have to be very, very careful.
yes, 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 yes. Exactly, exactly. Let me ask something, Chuck. In your experiences, I know you're not only a psychic, but you're a medium. Do a lot of the dead people hang out at cemeteries, or do they just, they're not there anymore?
They're definitely there.
Okay.
Also,
All right.
my feeling is they're everywhere. They're, and
Okay.
I've I remember once I was with my older brother. He'd never, and this is fairly recent. We'd never been to my our parents' gravesite together, and I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't, I couldn't visit it when I was up north. But I've been there
Right.
a few times now that I'm home in Florida. He's never been because he can't accept their death. To
Okay.
him, they're still living. And one day I said, let's go to the gravesite, and we did. But it was amazing. I'm not there a matter of a few minutes, and in comes the messages, and they were right on the money. I would
Okay.
ask him different things, and he goes, yes, 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 about his family.
Mm-hmm.
And so they are around there. But I don't
Okay.
think it has to be limited to certainly not limited to a cemetery.
Right.
But
Right.
there's something, I call it Googling them. I've done readings on trains. I've done it once. I was on board an airplane coming in for a landing in Texas, and
Mm-hmm.
the what do they call them now? Not stewardesses, but flight
Yeah, well,
attendant.
but don't worry, I get it. You know, I'm from a
Flight
school
attendant.
where they were called stewardesses, so don't worry about that.
Yeah, she woke me up. I'm sitting in, taking a nap, getting ready to. We were. I was on my way to Texas, working on a case with. I think it was 9 different girls went missing in a week, and I
Wow.
and I was going there to help them on, work on the case. But anyway, the flight attendant woke me up and she said, "Mr. Bergman, I know who you are. Could I come to the back of the plane?" I'm going, "What?
Okay.
I didn't do anything." Like, what?
Yeah.
Why
Right.
do I need to go to the back? And you go back, she opens the curtains, we go in. And apparently, another flight attendant, a male, had just received word that his fiance died in a car crash.
Oh.
And she knew what I did and all that. And she thought I could be of help, which
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of hard to go from sound asleep on a plane to
Sure.
waking up, giving someone a reading. But his fiance came in beautifully. In fact, I remember I said, "Yeah, I'd like to try to connect, but I don't know if I can do it with a plane that's coming in for a landing." And, I just woke up and everything. Can you give me a couple of minutes? I looked at him. I said, "I keep hearing, go to Italy, go to Italy. What's up in Italy?" And he started crying. He said, "Our wedding is next month, and we
Oh.
were going to Italy for a vacation, for a honeymoon."
Oh.
So
That's
Italy was
unfortunate.
very important. She wanted him to go there, even though they weren't,
Right.
going to get married and be there. She still wanted him to go.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm just saying, sometimes you get put on the spot. You're not expecting to do a reading, and you end up doing a
Let me
reading.
tell you something. That's got to be a difficult one. And and I'm surprised because sometimes you hear how sometimes when like somebody's freshly passed away, they don't communicate right away. You got to give them a little bit of time. But it sounds like she was ready to like let them
Oh
know
yeah,
quickly.
right away. And I've had even a family member who died that morning come through that afternoon for me, and I didn't even know he
Wow.
had died. In fact,
Wow.
no one knew he had died. He was out on one of those ATVs
Uh huh.
and had a pretty severe accident and died. But
Okay.
even though no one else knew about it, I knew about it.
Can you? That's gotta be. I imagine for you because how's this? For you, like you're saying, you don't know. This is not a reading like a client reading, where chances are, yes, this person is coming for a deceased relative or whoever. This is for you that you're thinking, okay, if I'm seeing you, that means something happened to you. Like otherwise, I what is? And let me ask you what. Without, I don't want you to say. What is it that he wanted to say? Was it like, hey, this happened, or I'm okay, or?
Yeah, he basically that he called it foolish. I remember that. What he did
Okay.
was foolish, and he knew
Right.
it. And had a few things to say to my niece, who was
Okay.
engaged to him at the time. And here's again something else. Some people, depends on how you believe in this stuff or whatever. I believe in everything that I witness. I know it to be true. And in this case, I'm telling my niece, I said, he's talking about an acorn. Can you tell me something about an acorn? She goes, no, no, no. And I said, this is definitely an acorn. And I'm seeing it like rolling. She said, no, no acorn. It doesn't mean anything. The next day, she called me up. She said she was having breakfast, sitting in her kitchen, drinking her coffee, and she heard a funny noise and she turned and an acorn rolled out from under the refrigerator and
Oh
it's
my
going
God.
across the kitchen floor.
Oh wow.
So they do stuff like that, which you can't
Right.
deny it then,
Yes.
especially if you've got other people that hear you giving that kind of a statement and then it happens. Of course, when it happens, I'm going, I know what I'm seeing, I know what I'm hearing,
Right.
and you get frustrated. Like, how come they're not recognizing that piece of information?
Right. It's almost like foretelling. In other words, he wanted to
There is,
set it up.
they do see the future. They do see the future.
Let me ask you, when you said that thing about the flight, I'm sure do you think it's possible, you heard of what was it, the flight 401, the one that was, remember there was that crash out in the Everglades? I want to say it was in the
I find that to be
70s.
the most eerie flight crash I've ever heard of.
Right. And contrary, because, there were survivors on that because when it went into, the marshy area in the Everglades, there were survivors, but the crew, they died and they repurposed parts of the plane. And for people that once upon a time, there was an airlines called Eastern that was based out of Miami.
Yep.
They're not around anymore. But anyway, I'm sure you've heard of it that they took some of the parts of that plane and they put them on other planes. And then there was a time that mostly the air crews were seeing the
Yes, I heard
pilots.
that.
And I was going to ask you, have you run across that where, in other words, like they were tied and they were so solid looking that people mistook them for like real people, like sitting in a certain chair or certain back there.
Absolutely. And I
And
wonder why then common people can see it, almost like I was talking about Ray Charles being that visible.
yes,
But yeah,
and
I've
from
heard of
what I
that. It's called psychometry when the energy is attached to a certain thing, especially during trauma, like a car crash or
right,
a plane crash or train crash, anything like that. A lot of trauma will kind of make that happen.
right, because from what I understand, they didn't realize that they were going down, and it's only when one of them like looked that he saw, oh God, and that's it. They crashed, the that impact. And from what I understand, even Eastern employees were prohibited from talking about it.
I
Like you
heard
could get
that
in big
too.
trouble
Yeah,
if you said, "Hey, I saw this," but they were like, people would think they would usually sit like towards the back. You know how sometimes they would give the pilots like you can ride for free kind of deal. So sometimes you do have
yeah.
personnel sitting in the back. The seats nobody wants, and they would have even people say talk about them and from what I understand, eventually, and you always think, was it their trauma? Are they bound because of why are they still being seen? From what I understand, eventually it got so bad that they just very quietly, of course, took all those parts from the different planes that they had used them on and just like let's get them out of there because they had so many reports about that happening, and that was it.
But they couldn't investigate that a little further though and find out what it's all about. And by the way, if it's a pilot or whatever that they're seeing, that doesn't mean that his soul or spirit is
No,
limited to that area or to that item. Spirits can be in multiple places because they're traveling at the speed of light and they have no
okay,
walls. They're not worried about, anything stopping them or weather or anything. They're
right,
energy. So
And
But
what's really
why would
weird
they
is,
bother hanging around it? That's what I don't
well,
understand.
that's the thing, because sometimes you know how people will say, "Oh, you know, they were seen and then the plane crashed," or "Hey, they were seen and the plane developed." No, 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 they were seen and nothing would happen to the flight. It wasn't like they were a portent of like, "Hey, I'm giving you a warning." It's just that they were being seen on the planes. And by the way, a lot of times, like I'm gonna use the word stewardesses because I'm sorry, I don't care. The people weren't aware of the, as far as the employees, which of the planes had actually been outfitted using the parts from that original plane that crashed. You know, it's one of those things that you didn't know about. But after a while, it got around. You know, it circulated. Hey, plane so and so or plane so and so. And sure enough, you know, there's always ways to find stuff like that when you work at a
Sure,
company.
yeah.
You find out that, yeah. And I'm just thinking, what is it? You know, what tie was it between the materials that plane was made of? Because obviously it was a part, and those pilots. Was it like a feeling of responsibility?
Yeah, well, and it's like the attachment that I don't get.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I was introduced to psychometry, and
Mm-hmm.
it was at a James Van Prague, large meeting
Yes.
in Boston. And he said, find someone sitting next to you that you don't know and swap with them, either a watch or a ring or a wallet or, you know,
Right.
something physical. I want you to swap with them. And then you tell them a history behind that item. I go, no, come on, that's ridiculous. So I took my watch off and gave it to a stranger next to me.
Okay.
He gave me his watch, but I will admit I was so interested in this stuff at the time. I remember putting
Okay.
the watch on and trying to really get into it. Say, what can I get from this? And I didn't get anything at all until, he said, give it back and then tell the person what you felt. And it was so weird because I looked the guy straight in the eye and I said, this was your dad's watch before he died, and he only wore it when he went surf fishing.
Oh my God.
Now, what a weird thing to say.
And
To
you what?
surf
You didn't
fishing.
get anything? That sounds wow.
And then he looked at me and he teared up. He said, "This was my dad's watch. My dad was a heart surgeon. He had 3 different watches. One he wore to work, one he wore when he went out to dinner and stuff like that. But the
Mm-hmm.
one that he gave to me, he only wore it when he went down to the Cape surf fishing."
Come on, Chuck.
And I went, "What?" Like
I didn't get anything. What? Well,
I've
let me
had
ask you. Did
I've
he
had
tell
other
you
things
anything
like
about
that.
you?
You what?
Did he tell you anything about your watch?
Only that he knew mine was new and it was very cheap, and that he at the time I was with a girlfriend, and he said, "I didn't buy it." He said, "She bought it." And I said, "Yes." And it was
Ah,
just kind of
that's
a
okay. So he was the lucky one. He was actually sitting next to a psychic, in other words.
yeah. And
He
so
must have
yeah,
been blown away.
there's a
God.
lot behind that though. Yeah, but I'm willing to try anything like that just to see how I feel about it.
Mm-hmm.
And even if I hear people talking about stuff I don't understand or I can't do it,
Right.
boy, I'm still intrigued by it though. I want to hear more and more and more.
Let me answer the psychometry. I imagine, is it the longer a person uses an item, it's more charged?
I believe so. I believe so. And I've done that with
Okay.
missing children too, where
Okay.
um, I'll tell you the eeriest one is a young girl that went missing. And I believe
Mm-hmm.
to this day she's still missing. So I went to the home to see what I could pick up on. And then at
Right.
one point, and this is in Texas,
Right.
I, uh, I said, I'd like to go in her bedroom. So would one of you come in there with me? And when I walked in the bedroom, I just sat on the edge of the bed to almost put myself like how she would feel in her own bedroom and everything. But every wall had hand drawn sketches, almost like charcoal drawings, pencil drawings, and they were immaculate. They were beautiful. They were
Wow.
incredible. So anyway, I'm looking around the room, just getting a feel for the it's things a teenager would draw. Some of it creepy and some of it,
Sure.
odd. But she was very, very talented. Anyway, she worked at a burger barn. This was another one that ended up on the Nancy Grace TV show.
Okay.
So I'm sitting in the restaurant where she was last seen, where she worked. And when I
Okay.
walked in to sit down at a table with my sister, we both flew there together. We sat at a table, and I went, I don't want to sit here. I want to go over by the wall. I want to sit in one of the booths. So we go over and sit in the booth. And as we're sitting there, I'm talking to my sister. And the edge on the booth, how they have the, like that little end piece, and then that table,
Yes.
there's a seat behind you. It joins the two seats. I'm looking by my sister, and the lamination was like separating a little. And I'm staring at it while I'm talking to her, but it kept pulling my attention. I took a butter knife, put it in, and pulled out. Be better if I show it on a piece of paper. With the knife, I was able to pull out a folded piece of paper, kind of like this. The butter knife pulled it out very, very nicely. I open it up, and it's the girl's drawing
What?
of a headstone and a hand coming out of the ground, reaching for a .357 Magnum, and blood all over her hand. And that's what was on the drawing. And I looked at my sister. I said, "This is exactly what we just saw in that room last night."
Right, and you knew by because you had been into her
and I've
bedrooms.
never done that where I've gone with someone, sat down and said, "I don't want to sit here. I want to go sit at a booth." You know what I mean? It just doesn't happen. And then for me to notice it and pull it out, to this day, we still talk about that. Was one of the
Do you think
eeriest.
she was suicidal, or she was?
She knew she was going to be murdered. I know that's what it was.
Right. Okay, that's what I'm
She
going
knew.
with that.
She knew this guy was going to. And as it turned out, because her boyfriend worked with her.
Okay.
And from what I understand, to this day, he's still running around free. They didn't get enough evidence. And where I messed up is I really should have called the police and said, "Send one of the detectives here. I want you to see this," and then show them. But instead, I took it back to the family. They opened it up and they said, "That's definitely from our daughter. Where did you get it?" So, and then the meaning behind the paper. But it was also weird that I'm the one to find it, and
what are the chances on that? Come on, Chuck.
One in a billion. I mean, truly. True. And what are the odds that, we were on our way to the airport, me and my sister and I said, "Look, there's that," it was called Burger Barn. I said, "That's where she must have worked. Let's go in and have lunch." It was
That's the thing. Like, if you hadn't seen also her pictures to begin with, I mean, that would have been a weird find anyway to begin with.
It would have been a weird find. You're right. But because I already knew her talent, I knew it was from her. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if they would.
That's a very eerie, that's a very disturbing drawing.
Yeah.
Think about it.
And especially the contents of the drawing that she had done. It was chilling. It really was.
It's almost like that you think about it, that she knew it, like, you get like that, what's that feeling that you're predestined, like, I'm not going to escape my fate kind of deal, makes you wonder.
And I think that goes back almost 20 years ago. And the thing is, when I went to the meeting with the family and the police and all of that, when they first had me come in to work on the case, I said, "All will return but one." And I named her. And to this day, she still hasn't returned, nor have they found the body.
Right. No, I would think that sometimes at this point, they, every once in a while, I know that, but scenarios like that, and this is the thing sometimes, and I don't know if you've run across it, and I know as a police officers that I've seen it where, some of these killers, besides the fact that they obviously they hide, something like what happened with that that guy that took the body to another jurisdiction, that sometimes when you have different jurisdictions, it's difficult to solve the crime.
Sure, yes. It's harder.
It's harder because they're not aware of the crime that happened in that other location versus over here. Or if they look for a report around that area, there wouldn't have been anything because the crime occurred in Florida, kind of deal. So in other words, nobody would have thought to look, that mound over there of disturbed earth.
Right. Even the detective may have even looked over there, didn't even for a second think it was a body until he got the other information.
Exactly.
And it is funny that I do use my police background does help me get into help and work with police because I speak their language.
Sure.
I can sit and joke with them and everything. I've done the work. I know what it's all about. But there are times when it'll backfire. I did one a while back where they call me into this big meeting, and the person that contacted me and had me go to assist on a murder, they were asking me questions about how I work and all. And then she said, "Well, if you're any good, then I want you to contact my grandmother."
Oh, here we go.
I said, I can't believe you're doing this to me. I said, if you want me to connect with your grandmother, go online, book a reading. I picked up my stuff and left. I was
Of
that put
course.
out, like, you got to be kidding.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And
But
it's
yes,
like,
so my point is sometimes police can be hard to work with. And if you're not from that realm, it's going to be even harder.
do you ever have them come to you like on the slide, like, Chuck, don't tell anybody that our department is using you,
All
okay?
the
Shh, shh,
time.
shh, shh.
All
Okay.
the time.
It's like,
I've
shh,
even had
shh, shh.
police chiefs say, we really appreciate your help if you can solve this one, but we will never admit that you helped
Right.
us.
Yeah,
I said,
exactly.
wow, that's encouraging.
And you know what? I tell people, I tell people, you know what? Because everybody thinks about, these police departments, they don't want to get that reputation of being woo. And, because I said, forget the woo stuff. Do you really think that any police department wants to say, we didn't solve that case? We
You're
even used
right.
a
You're
psychic.
right.
It makes them look like, you guys couldn't solve this case,
That's
but you
their
got a
big deal.
psychic.
Like, we can do all this kind of work down here. It's kind of menial, but now we've got
Yes.
this. And this guy
Mhm.
wants to come in and get the glory. No, no thanks.
Exactly. Like, hey,
But,
he's going to make us look like idiots.
but that
That
happens to patrolmen. They solve the case and everything and
I've heard
get
of
all the
that.
data, all the information. And then you get either the chief or the detectives or the lieutenants.
Yeah.
Someone will jump in and pull it away from them, take
Right.
all
They
the
do the
glory.
legwork, especially if it's got some type of exposure, in the media.
Yeah.
They want to be the ones to be in front of the cameras, and yeah, we are department. But even if they say our department, it's their face or their them that's in front of the cameras. So people equate the department with that person as
They
far as
really do.
success. As far as success, yeah, that's it. And everybody, I'm telling you, the egos getting a lot of egos mess up a lot of things.
It really does. Yeah. And I've got
Yes,
my own little set of rules because I've had to work on that over time.
I'm sure.
And one of my uh, rules, if I'm working on a murder, I don't
Hmm.
want any other psychics. I don't want any other
Yes.
confusion or misleading or
Hmm.
misinterpreting of what's going on.
Right.
And
Yes.
very meticulous in what I see, what I hear, and just like the one where the the um the model being found by the rock, you
Right.
got to be careful what you give out. You got to weigh everything out before you present it. You can't just randomly throw all this stuff out. You got to be very
And think
careful.
and think about it. You hear sometimes about these, and I'm going down into. I know that some people say, "Well, Marlene, you're getting, these serial killers," and I know not everybody's a serial killer, but you know that they have sometimes this preference for dumping grounds where, you know, like you said, you have this location, but they might find something else there while they're looking for that other one because unbeknownst, nobody really knows that this is an area, a piece of land that this person has been using to drop off bodies because hey, it's worked great.
Yeah.
you know,
So they don't change.
they don't change. They don't
They
change. Like
don't.
that guy, what was it? The Gilgo Beach murderer, the one that up in Long Island, is it? That
Long Island.
the oh my God, what's his name, Marlene? That he's had stumped people for like 20 years. And I think they broke it like maybe a year ago. Hold on. Serial Gilgo Beach murders.
I
Where
did
did
hear
it?
about one, but
Okay.
I didn't pay attention.
Okay, that's as a matter of fact, 2 weeks ago, Rex Hewerman. Okay, and apparently he had been dumping. Well, they have found. It took them a while to realize that it was a dumping ground for bodies, and they finally, found. He had been doing this for like years and years and years, and as a matter of fact, one of the I'm looking here, one of the ones that he was charged with was from the remains that were found back in 2000. Okay, this is how long this
Oh
gentleman
wow.
was going out there. And that's what I'm saying. He had been leaving bodies out there for a while. Nobody would find him until somebody stumbled across him, and even then they couldn't. Like I was saying, sometimes when they come across some of these remains, they're skeletonized. So there's, as far as getting DNA or proof or all the other things that you get from somebody that's been just killed or murdered, it's more difficult. But yeah, and so that's what I thought of when you told me that story about that. You told him, "Look here," but she was in another place. I'm thinking, man, I wonder if this person was using that as a dumping ground, and or sometimes kill that people don't realize, people killers do sometimes move the body. They do. They get a little wigged out and they'll put
They
it
do.
here at a certain
Yeah.
place and then they move it.
They can't sleep at night. They get
Yeah. Yes.
paranoid. They definitely go out and do it. Move them.
Yes. People don't and from what I understand, part of the psychology of it is that if they know where this person was buried or hidden or whatever, it's like they have that they own that person. How's this? And I know that sounds very morbid, but since nobody knows that she's mine, I know where she's at. She still belongs to me, and I can go and see where she's at whenever I want. And I'm the only one that knows that. And I know
Yeah.
that's very weird, but I think that sometimes that's why they also choose certain spots as far as where they dispose of their victims.
I think you're
It's a
right. You know,
Yeah, they get the it's a weird
it's a
psychology.
comfort. It's a comfort that they get out of it.
Well, it's something I want to say maybe along the, which by the way I was, that how they talk about some of these that they have these trophies that they keep as far as their psychopathology demands. Hey, I need to keep something of that person because I can relive whatever, because of course they're very sick. As far as, have you ever had a case, Chuck, where a person either was or there was suspected that they were a victim of some type of serial killer in the area that had killed other people?
I don't think I've had that, and I don't think I have.
You know how
Not for.
sometimes it takes them a while to realize that they might have one perpetrator because they'll have one here and then
Yeah.
something else happens and then all of a sudden they
Usually
start
mine are just.
realizing it.
Yeah.
I'm
Usually
sorry.
mine are one on one, and
Okay, and that's it. Okay.
I don't. I'm trying to think. I don't think I've failed on any. Maybe I maybe have given up on one, but that would be
Mm-hmm.
it. You know.
Yeah, but you know what I'm talking about, that sometimes it takes a while before the police department, but hopefully if it happens in their same, area, that they realize, hey, we've had this murder here or this disappearance or whatever, and they're realizing, wait a minute, we might have the same person committing these crimes. All right. And then you have maybe a murder or disappearance, and they're wondering, is this a victim of that same
Sure. Yeah.
person? You know, um, that kind of that I wonder that, and again, I want to say I imagine that it's the most difficult thing. Like, well, that girl that you said that even though nobody was charged with her murder, they were looking at the boyfriend. But I'm thinking the one that's got to be really difficult is when the crime is perpetrated by a stranger against a stranger. In other words, you have nothing against this person. There's none of the motives that you usually see that that people, as horrible as it is, kill another person over. They're just that victim is at the wrong place at the wrong time for whatever reason. And then the police are like, you look at how they say they look at the family, they look at the husbands or the boyfriends or the girlfriends or the
Yeah.
whatever or the co-worker, but none of those people, they got alibis, and I imagine that's got to be the most difficult one.
It's got to be. It is. I mean, it is. No doubt about it. Trying to prove it, and yet you don't have that evidence, but yet up here,
Let me ask you
So,
something. Have you had these victims, when you see them, have they ever tried to give you information, this is the person that did this to me, or this is how it happened?
oh yeah, yes,
Okay.
yes. I've even had them say the person that they are arresting or going after,
Mm-hmm.
that's the right person. You've got
Oh,
him.
really?
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
like they're happy. Like,
Yes. Yes, exactly. Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That that they're like, because I imagine that some, at some level, you want, even in the afterlife, I imagine people want justice for themselves. How's that?
I think they want it for us.
You
I
think?
think they're okay with where they're at. I really do. I think
Okay.
that they're okay with that, but they know how we're feeling down here,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't want to see that person wrong other people or get away with it or whatever. But
Right.
you know,
Okay.
there is a reason for them to try and help, to try and help. So
Right. That there's a purpose behind it, except, not just like, well, I'm out of here because I guess I was just unlucky that day. I'm by, that kind of deal. Um, that's. Let me tell you something. How does that affect you personally, Chuck? Has there ever been a case or something that's really affected you personally after you do the reading that you
typically,
come
when I
across?
work on cases with children, it really,
Mm-hmm.
I just, number one, their spirit will come through more energetic and
Okay.
more like crying or whatever, and it makes it very hard. It's very emotional. I'll
Okay.
tell you one, and this isn't on a bad nature at all, but it was one that I live with, and I feel good and yet I don't. And what happened
Okay.
was I'm giving a lady a reading. Her 5-year-old son had died from cancer, and
Okay.
that's just a hard one to accept.
Yes.
So at the end of the reading, I took a chance. I said, I know what I saw. I know what I feel at the end. I said, your son's saying goodbye, but he loved it, Mom, when you walked into the room and you put your hand palm up, you slid it underneath his little hand, covering it with your other hand, making a hand sandwich. Not a ham,
Wow.
but a hand sandwich, which is something
Uh-huh.
a 5-year-old would probably say.
Exactly. Yes.
Now I have to hope that she knows what I'm talking about.
Sure.
But I just want to show you how emotional and unbelievable a reading can be. She said, I'm in Pennsylvania. This is where he died. He died 2 days ago. And in Pennsylvania, you can have the body in the home, which is where he died, for up
Mm-hmm.
to 3 days.
Okay.
So they're going to remove him tomorrow. It's hard to even say this without tearing up. For the reading, she said, I put a chair next to his bed, next to his body.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, when you said the energy was getting weak, time to go, I slid my hand underneath his and now I couldn't make that story up. And
Right.
I
Exactly.
covered it with my other hand. I guess she's wearing like the little headset.
Right.
And she said, and then I said to her about the hand sandwich,
Sandwich.
and
Wow.
oh man, it's like,
That has got
and,
to be that
and then
that
you're
that.
just feeling the youth and the joking
Yes.
and what it meant to him that his mother would even do that.
Right.
I don't know if I'd have this. Maybe that's what's bothering me. If it were my child, would I
Oh,
have the strength to?
let me tell you. And I think also it's the circumstances, like you said, this was a child that was ill. So the parent already knew, for lack of a better word, that it was going to be inevitable. How's that? That was going to
Yeah,
happen sooner or later. But regardless, there's no way to go around that, to ease that. But that's why I asked you that question, which is like, because yeah, we could go down the road of, when you look at the crime stories, but I'm sure that you have uh you know clients that come to you with that type of scenario where there's no mystery. It's we're just talking. It's just, and I imagine what everybody wants to know, Chuck, is that other person, whether it's a child or an adult, that they're okay.
that's all they want to know, really. And by the
Yeah.
way, that's a good point. A lot of people that will have a visit, whether it's a dream or if they're working on the computer and then they feel their loved
Mm-hmm.
one around them, they turn. It's usually I'm okay, or
Right.
don't worry about me, or I'm fine. It's very quick, one or two words, and they're gone. They disappear.
But I think also people sometimes, they distrust sometimes their own senses. They want to go to somebody like you, like, tell me that they're okay. Like,
That's what I would like too, though. I would like another person because, if it's not coming from me, if it's coming from someone else, but
right.
I like giving the proof that it's really them,
Mm-hmm.
you know, here's one that comes to mind because again, it'll show you how, weird this can be where my sister's husband died about a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
I went to the funeral and, did all that stuff. We went back to her house for the reception at her house. And after
Right.
everyone left, we had one or two little drinks, her and I talking about our childhood. And I loved her husband, Ken. He was the
Mm-hmm.
nicest guy, so easygoing and everything. Anyway, my sister happened to mention, of course, people do this to me too, not only as a medium, but they know that I know about computers.
Right.
Could I take a look at her computer because it's giving me a problem?
Yeah, it
So I
says
go
you're
in the other
here.
room and I'm sitting at the computer, and there was a hard drive that I could switch out and make it run. So I'm over there
Right.
with a screwdriver. I'm taking it apart. I'm not thinking about the funeral, mediumship, or any of that.
Right.
While I'm working on it, I turn my head, and my sister's sitting in the chair texting or whatever. But in walks her husband
Oh,
in spirit, completely like wearing work clothes, like he just got off work.
okay.
Here's the weird thing. He's got a paper bag with the top rolled down, holding it almost like a lunch in it or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And I kicked myself in the butt for doing this because as I looked over and saw him, and it was a shock. I wasn't expecting it. Instead of saying, Ken, how are you? Or whatever. Ken, what's in the bag? and to this day,
Yeah.
that was kind of rude. That was kind of like,
But you know what? That's probably sounds like you would have done if he was alive and he walked
well,
into
here's
the
the
room.
deal. Well, yeah. And what the thing is, without him saying hi, Chuck, or any of that, or say hi to your sister he goes, fish heads.
Oh.
I went, what do you mean fish heads? And whoop, he goes away. But this is how clever they are. This is how they work. A little bit later, my brother and his wife, come over to visit my sister. And she mentioned, they said, has Chuck seen Ken yet? No, I wasn't there at the time. She said, oh, yeah, this afternoon. And then she told my brother and his wife about the fish heads. Well, my brother's wife is from the Philippines. And when
Uh-huh.
they first came to America, and when they got married 40 something years ago, and they lived near Mayport, the naval base, they would go to the naval base fish market and buy fish heads because she would make fish head soup.
Yes.
Now, she had made it for a while, and I'd never heard of fish head soup. Anyway, many years went by. They haven't made it. But that very day that this happened with Ken and the bag,
Uh-huh.
they went to Mayport to get free fish heads to make fish head soup, and were really ticked off because now they're charging for fish heads
So
that
they're like, wow, what is this?
before they used to gladly give them away.
Right.
So he said, yeah, today, he said, in fact, they're in the refrigerator now. She's going to make fish head soup tomorrow.
The chances of
But
that, Chuck.
what I know, to me, that's all foreign. You don't.
Right, like fish heads.
You throw the head away, or you use it for fertilizer, or you do whatever you
right.
do. But
Yeah.
I was really. But again, what amazing stuff! Things that if I want proof that it was really him, there's the proof. And one more element that really ties it in even better. 2 days earlier this was 2 days after the funeral. 2 days earlier at the funeral, my brother and his wife couldn't go because they were both sick.
Okay.
So he was visiting them 2 days later at their home, knew about the fish heads, and he knew he knew I would ask about the bag. He knew.
So he was tying it all in just in case anybody doubts it's really me. It's me.
It does tie in amazingly,
because something like a fish head's like nobody could say, well, that was a guess. It's coincidental. Even though I'm sure your family by now is like.
I'm getting a little disappointed. I'll look at like John Edwards, James Van Praagh. These are top of the hill mediums. Are really, really, really good at what they do. Mm-hmm. And are they perfect 100%? No one is.
Right.
But no matter what they give to an audience or whatever, these so-called critics are going to find fault with everything they do.
Right.
And I find it a little upsetting. I look at it and go, not one person who believes in this or has had a reading will comment because they know all these people will jump on them,
Right.
So
exactly.
And then they're spreading the message, don't have a reading, they're all frauds, it's all fake. And then there are people that could really use a reading to help them get through the trauma, get through the pain, the hurt. And I get it all the time. I get people saying, you gave me a reading 15 years ago, and I still remember every word of it.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
it's helping people.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know that here in Florida we have down the coast Casadega,
I've been
which
there,
is
yes.
that little town that if you go to quick, it was like that
Yeah,
was back
very,
there.
very quaint little town. I've given readings in their big church that they have.
Mm-hmm.
I've been there, and very nice people there. Very,
Yeah, they
very
are.
open, very, very friendly people.
Yeah. And people don't realize that if you're not psychic, you can't live there.
I know you can't.
And you gotta like, yeah, you gotta be a good psychic too. Like in other words, I think they test you. Like you just can't like set up shop. Like, hey,
Oh, I
I'll
know.
just buy that house over there.
Lori Cabot, we talked about her earlier.
Yes.
When I was first breaking out with this, she was giving not mediumship, but meditation classes
Uh
so
huh.
that you could become a medium. And,
Okay.
there were probably 50 people that paid to go to this class. And it was day number one. I'm in the class thinking, like, well, Lori Cabot, the official witch, she's got
Right.
to be good at meditation. And I just wanted to learn. I was really eager to learn. So she had us close our eyes and imagine a TV coming down and then see an apple in the middle of the TV screen. And without expecting, she said, open your eyes, everyone, right now. Open your eyes. She said, if you didn't see the TV and the apple, raise your hand. I didn't see anything, so I raised my hand. She said, you're not ready for this. Get out. Get out of the class. So she booted me.
You're
She
kidding.
booted me
Isn't
and
that
said,
funny? Isn't that great?
it
It's like,
is. And to this day, I don't know if she remembers kicking
uh
me
huh.
out, but she did. Me and
Yeah.
about 20
Wow.
people. She said, you're not ready. Leave. But
And
I
it's like,
don't work that way. I don't
but you
close
know
my
what?
eyes and
I'm gonna tell you something because I was a hypnotherapist for many years, Chuck. And when you're a hypnotist, you work a lot with people's suggestibility, and the way their mind works. And there's people that you could say, imagine this, and they'll imagine it. They'll see that. And then there's other people if you say that we use the word imagine, it's just not the way their mind works. You see what I'm saying? So
do.
when you're saying that, it's like she didn't know what she was talking about. You just have a different suggestibility from you and the others that she said, get out of here. That the instructions that you give as far as because some people you say imagine and they see it in their head, they'll see the TV and the apple and what else do you want, and clouds behind it and the
But are
birds
they,
and
and if
they'll
they don't see it, they could be lying about it just to
right,
say,
right. And
you
then
know,
there's other people that the just suggestibility is totally different, as far as they have a hard time with that imagine thing kind of deal. Which, by the way,
now
I'm not talking about psychic stuff. I'm just talking about.
are you still active with hypnotism?
I haven't done hypnosis. I mean, I have a channel, and I've recorded some stuff that I have there, but I haven't done the hypnotherapy part for a while. But I did it for many years, so I understand. That's why I'm saying when you said that, I was like, she
It,
doesn't know what
it's
she's
an
talking.
it's an amazing thing. I was hypnotized many years ago,
Uh huh.
and at the time I was married, my wife wanted to lose weight, so they took her into the room to put the headphones on and listen to the recording to be hypnotized to lose weight. Well, the
Mm-hmm.
secretary said to me, "Hey, Chuck, did I want to be hypnotized for anything?" And at the time, I didn't need to lose weight or anything. I said, "No, not really." And she said, "Well, then what's my name?" I said, "I remember getting off the elevator, the doors open, you greeted us, you gave us your name, and I can't remember it."
Uh
She
huh.
said, "For $35, I could go into the room, put on the headphones, be hypnotized to remember names."
Yes.
And I'm thinking that's bull. But then what happened was she said, "In 2 weeks, if it doesn't work, I'll give
Yeah.
you the money back." Something, well, I got nothing to lose, so I went in, put
Sure.
the headphones on. To this day, I can still remember names like 98% accurate
Sure.
on almost every person I meet,
Yes. Well,
only
one time
because of
I
that.
would work with a lot of people that that had memory retention for like exams. Let's say they were going to take an exam, they would study, and then they would like blank out because they would start getting so anxious. And then what happens? It's like a snowball effect. The more they blank out, the more worried they become the next time they
Sure.
were going to take a test. So you work with them not only on memory retention but triggers, like when you do this, like let's say when you put down this pencil or whatever, it's gonna come to you. All right. But sometimes, even though this was strictly hypnosis, memory retention, or also lessening the anxiety, that comes with, because it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I remember one time I had this gentleman. He had moved from California. He had been a nurse, and I want to say this was less than 20 years ago. But anyway, they offered this program, come to Florida, okay? And you can, I think he was like an LN, you become an RN, and you go to school and get trained at the same time. You work at the hospital and train thing, like, hey.
Yeah.
So he left California. He left family, friends, he had been working for like 15 years. And I remember when he told me, he says, look, I haven't been to school like in 15 years, and I'm having this problem, this huge problem with taking the tests. I'm going blank and I'm studying. And he goes, and part of the program was you had to go and work at the hospital, like, that kind of like, and I helped him. I helped him out. But this is the part that people don't understand. And I asked him, well, let me ask you, worst case scenario, what happens if he goes, no, I guess I got to go back to California. I mean, like all everything he knew, he left. He was one of these people is like, I'm going to do it because I want to say it wasn't a scholarship, but it was one of those where you're going to be able to get your RN with no cost because you're going to work and study at the same time. Really, in reality, if you look at that gentleman, his problem was, which is what I found with a lot of my clients, behavior modification, is that he really didn't want to leave. He wanted to leave. He wanted to do it. But at the end of the day, he was in another state across the country by himself.
Yeah.
Okay. And if he failed, hey, I can go back home. I can go back home. I can go back home and be with my friends and my family and everything that I know, blah, 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 blah. So he was kind of doing also a little bit, besides the anxiety part, he was doing a little bit of the self-sabotage because it would let him go back to what he wanted. Because this was, let me tell you something, talk about a change. This was a real drastic change. I don't blame him. I came across that a lot, but sometimes that's one of the things. But that thing about the memory, yes, I work, and I had other people that called me and would want me to help them forget things, and I go, it doesn't work that way. Doesn't work that way.
I was amazed at what I could memorize and recall it like 2 or 3 days, 2 weeks later. Mm-hmm. But I did call the lady after 2 weeks. I said, remember you offered a refund? And she said, yeah. I said, my wife hasn't lost any weight.
So I want my money back.
No, yeah.
Let me tell you something. I used to do a lot, same thing for the weight control. As a matter of fact, this time of year, Chuck, this was one of my busiest times of year because everybody would have their New Year's resolution kind of deal going on. Whatever it was, who knows, like I'm going to lose weight or I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that, blah, 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 blah. Everybody's all excited. And and then come March or April or even before. And so around this time, I had a lot of people that would come to see me and I would say, let me ask you something. This New Year's resolution stuff, is this the first time you've done it? And I already kind of knew the answer. They were like, no, that's why I came to see you because I've made this New Year's resolution stuff and I crash and burn like a couple of months down the road. And some people I bought like gym memberships. They went whole hog.
I've done that before. And then.
Right. And I said, you know what the biggest problem is? And they're like, what? I go, you called it a New Year's resolution. You're following a pattern. You're setting yourself up for the same thing all over again. You already know. It's like we're very resistant to change. I said, the fact that you're using the same time period, the New Year's resolution scenario, which by the way, you're getting bombarded by the media for everything, all
I know.
The diet pills, the blah, 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 blah. I said, all the gyms are offering specials. I go, that you're following the pattern. Didn't you tell me that maybe you've had a couple of years that this happened? They're like, yeah. I go, this is a bad time. But I said, we'll get beyond that. But yeah, sometimes we set ourselves up, even at the timing of stuff, to repeat. Okay, you guys be quiet. Yeah, the crash and burn cycles. That I mentioned that because of the timing, the time of year was when everybody was like, nah, this is the year. I'm going to stop smoking. I'm going to whatever.
I think the cooler weather does it too. We're less likely to go out and burn calories. So what do? You sit down at a table or
no, you know
restaurant?
what it is? I'm telling you, Chuck, and I know I'm going to segue. people realize that they've had to make these changes, whatever it is, whether it's drop weight or stop smoking or some type of behavior modification, something that they realize, man, either I got to do this or stop doing the other. All of a sudden, plus everybody else around you is doing it.
I
But
know.
you've always had in the back of your mind, you've been putting it off. I'm going to do it at the New Year's. That's it. 2025 is going to be the year. And it's going to be like, no. Because you know what? I tell everybody, when you really, there's something that you really decide, that's it. This has got to stop. Or I gotta drop weight, whatever. You do it right then and there. There's something that thing when you start putting it off till like that New Year's thing. Hey, guess what? That's the
You'll
first.
never do it. You'll never make it happen.
Yeah, usually when you're really, that sick and tired, when you're really like sick and tired, you're like,
Yep.
that's it. Forget it. Right now, what's today's date? We're gonna start working on this. You're like, that's the real, but that's a whole nother show. Anyway, Chuck, it has been absolutely wonderful to talk to you. All right, it's
We
been
could go
so
until
great.
midnight. I just need a glass of
Yes,
wine with you,
yes,
and I think
yes,
we'd be all
yes,
set.
yes. So that, yeah, I told I ran out before I put my chickens away. I got everybody in. I locked everything else because I'm not coming out, man. It's too cold. I'm telling you, I'm such a wimp. But
You have chickens?
oh yeah, I have
Oh,
chickens
wow.
and I have these guineas, and my audience knows about it. I have some guinea fowls, and they're running around because of my acreage. And then they keep growing back their wings and they go up to the trees. My problem is that there's big owls out here, and I don't want to find any of the bodies decapitated. So
Sure.
on one of these
Yeah.
mornings, I'm gonna have to wake up. I'm gonna have to like corral them into my coop, close the door. And by the way, anybody that's not aware, guineas can be vicious. They're very strong birds, and I've got to go in there and grab them and cut their wings. But yes, I have chickens and I have
Wow.
guineas and all that other stuff. But anyway, yeah, I put everybody away because we also have a bobcat roaming around here somewhere.
Phew.
And it was like, nah, no. When I finish talking to Chuck, I'm staying indoors. I'm not going out there, man. It's too cold. Too cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll
So,
be, this is Florida. It'll warm up again. No
ow.
doubt.
Oh
No
no, let me
doubt.
tell you. God, last week, a couple of what was it? Like last week, all of a sudden it was like 78, 79. It's like, what is this?
I know. I loved it, though.
I know.
Had windows open and everything.
And then, I turn on the TV, Arctic Blast. I'm like, what?
I wouldn't go that far. Not Arctic
No, but
Blast.
you know how they put these
I know.
national graphs, you know, and I'm looking at it like Arctic Blast, and I'm like, but that's not going to reach Florida, right? Right?
Oh, yeah. Or they'll interrupt programs to bring on an alert.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
going to go
yeah.
down to 50. What's the big deal?
Yeah,
What's
I know, I know,
what's
I
the
know.
worry?
But for me, yeah, it's like to me, it's like, ooh, no, yeah, I don't know. You know how they say that? Well, Floridians, your blood has thinned out, and you kind of feel the cold a
I
little bit
believe that.
more.
I don't know if it's thinning out. I don't know what it is, but I feel it. I feel it now. Years ago, I could be in this kind of weather and think nothing of it. I could go out all day long in a short sleeve.
See, you would be the kind of tourist that we would see running around going, "What's wrong with him? It's freezing," you know.
I know.
T-shirts and sandals. It's like, let's go to the beach.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I remember I grew up in Miami, and you see these people on the beach, and you're like, "That's a tourist. It's freezing.
Yeah,
What are you
that's a
doing?"
northerner. And you could tell they were white. They were totally
Yeah,
white.
it's like, man, and they're walking around all happy. Oh, this is great weather, And then you'd see like the Floridians, the Miamians. They're like,
I know.
like multi-layered. Because I tell everybody, remember, you don't have big coats. Not in Miami. All you have is these thinner. But of course, talk about layering. It's like this and this and
Yeah, it
this.
does help.
Yeah, of
We don't
course,
need it.
because it's freezing. Again, Chuck, it has been absolutely wonderful. And are you gonna work? Are you gonna do any other books, or do you got anything in mind?
I'm kind of cruising this part of my life, really. I do phone readings, I do in-house. I'm
Mm-hmm.
slowly considering getting back into group readings.
Okay.
They're so much fun. You never know what's going to pop up. It's always
Okay.
a laugh. Um, I went through some, hard issues, and that's
Okay.
behind me now. But I am strong enough now to go back on the road. So I might do it again. I might, but actually doing, police work, I'm kind of keeping away from it.
I imagine that's got to be
I'm enjoying
different.
the entertainment part. Is
Right,
just
right. That's a different
better.
type of reading versus, like you said, a reading for people like
Yeah. It's more
Okay.
rewarding, and you don't have all the conflict or
Yeah. Or egos.
yeah, and it can be rough.
Of
It can be
course.
really rough.
Of course. Of course. For my podcast listeners, what's your website, Chuck?
Well, there's my name on the screen. Just
Put
get rid of
that
that
comment there.
space. Get rid of that space and chuckbergman.com.
All right.
And if you put in psychic cop, it'll pop up.
Yeah, they'll find you that way also.
Well,
Okay. And
yeah,
all your books,
that
they
I
can
tell
find
people
them in your
that, and it seems
website.
to work.
Let me ask you something real quick. That other detective that wrote the book that he included you, did you work with him on a case, or he's just talking about, he just wrote just about you on a separate case,
Well,
or
he
did you
wrote
work with him?
on different cases that the detectives handled in
Mm-hmm.
Salem. So it's an
Right.
interesting book up to there. And then one of the chapters is about a young boy that died.
Okay.
And I gave Jim Gauthier, the detective, a
Right.
session where this guy came in beautifully,
Okay.
and he could have. Most cops were going to look the other way when it comes to psychic stuff,
Sure.
but he was very respectful and appreciative for the information I gave out on that case because it meant a lot to him too.
Okay.
And I mentioned things from the little boy that died
Okay.
that actually transpired with him, and he was very grateful.
Right. Something that only he was privy to, in other words. As
Yes.
far.
And in
Okay.
fact, it had to do because when I did the reading for Jim, he was working with the family of the
Okay.
deceased child. So, and then when he went to
Sure.
the family and said, "Is this true or that true?" They took him into the little boy's bedroom and pointed it out to him. It's like
Wow.
there's no way you can deny it. So,
Sure. Exactly. Exactly. And I'm sure he must have said, I'm not about to tell him how I found this out, but talk about validation.
and it was sad. I wish I don't want to get into the story because of respecting Jim's privacy, but
Mm-hmm.
the part I gave Jim involving his contact when the little boy was alive was a really amazing piece of information that I gave him.
Right.
He said, "Chuck, there's no way you would know about that." I said, "Well, he's telling me about it right now
Mm-hmm.
and showing me, but I had never heard of this happening." And let me say it this way: Jim was there when the young boy died,
Okay.
and even though he's a detective, so he
Mm-hmm.
worked with the family directly, but I had no way of knowing anything about it. I just wasn't connected with. In fact, it was before Jim was no, he was a detective because he actually went to the home and they gave him little trinkets and stuff like that from the
Okay.
kid's bedroom that I brought up that he had. So it was
So let me ask you something.
delicate.
I don't know, I'm assuming, was this a case, was it resolved? Did it have a good resolution or
Let me
no?
see. It was resolved. There was no doubt in what happened, how it happened,
Okay.
and there was
Okay.
no perpetrator. I'll put it that way.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Right.
but Jim was one on one with him when it was.
When part of the
Yeah. Now I'm understanding what happened here. Jim was much younger. He was only like 10 or like 15 years old when the death
Okay.
happened.
I
Then
see.
later he
Okay.
gets on the police department. And because of the reading, Jim then went back to the family.
Oh, how
That's what
interesting.
because I was trying to figure out, well, how would he know all this stuff was in the bedroom or whatever?
Okay.
And then the family said, yeah, here it is. And even gave Jim things to keep as a memento.
I understand.
So yeah, now I
I
remember
understand.
it was like I do so many cases. Sometimes they all
Oh,
get
sure, of course.
scrambled up and
That's
when you're
very
in that state where you're giving information, when you go back to normal, you don't usually remember everything that you've given out.
sure.
So it's
Yes.
kind of
Yes.
important that they either record it or take good notes or really,
Exactly.
remember
You
it.
know
But
how
a
they
lot of
say
times
about
I'm a
people
little
sometimes
foggy
that like
about.
keep a notebook if you have certain kind of dreams,
Oh,
write it down.
I've had people say like, "Oh, you told me one day I'd be owning 5 Mercedes." And I thought you were crazy. Now I own 5 Mercedes, crazy things. And I go, no, I've never told anyone that. That's crazy. I wouldn't say that.
Right.
But apparently
Exactly.
I did, and it did happen. So
So, no, but yeah, and it's really funny because I imagine what maybe is unimportant to you is really important to that other person. To you, it's like, I would never tell you you're
absolutely.
gonna have 5 Mercedes. Like what?
It's crazy
You
the
know?
stuff I get follow-up emails where they say, "You told me this a year ago. I didn't believe it. Boom, it happened."
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, I don't even remember telling him that, but I must have, or or he wouldn't be sending an email.
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. To you, you're like, oh. And to them, it's like the 5 Mercedes. I got my
Yeah,
5 Mercedes. Chuck told me. Everybody's different. I tell everybody's like,
everybody's
more
different,
specific.
and
But
you've
again,
got to
Chuck, thank you.
appreciate that.
It has been absolutely wonderful. I'm going to be contact you because we got to continue this conversation. It's been
I'd
wonderful.
love to.
Take
I'd love
care.
to.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. You too, Marlene.
Bye bye. Wow. I love talking to Chuck. He was great. We were talking even before. We were talking about the way. You see, he's originally from Florida, and he served in the police department up in Salem. And he was telling me, yeah, for many years I was in the Northeast, and he goes, after a while I got used to it. But he's back in Florida, you know, so grown. But yeah, there's something. You know what? Everybody's different. Yeah, I have a problem with the cold. But at times, sometimes I see these people with the snow and the shoveling, and I'd be like, no, 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 that's not for me. I'm used to getting in my vehicle and turning it on. Yeah, even let's say now in the cold weather, I'll let it warm up a minute. But none of this shoveling snow. Are you crazy? What? Nah, no, 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 no. And I guess when you grow up in that, I remember what was it? I was driving through. Was it the Carolinas or Tennessee? Where and I'm not talking on the highways because the highways but you go to some of these roads and they go up and they're steep and they come down. I'd be, man, if I had to drive this thing in the snow or the ice, I'd be a nervous wreck. What in the world? It's like, no, let me go. I mean, where I'm at now, we have hills. We have some hills out here. Like, when Florida starts going into Georgia, as you go further south into Florida, it gets flatter and flatter. And it's like, no, this is about as much, a few hills here and there, like where I'm at now. But nah, I'm telling you, it's well, like I said, when you grow up and this is the norm for you, you don't think twice about it. And we were also talking, about some of the crazy stuff, the truckers, and I'm like, man, I see some of these because I've driven across the country a few times, and some of the places, like if I had to be hauling something, I don't know how they do that. I mean, besides the obvious what he was talking about when they're away from their families and things like that, but still, yeah, hats off to truckers. Hats off to the truckers. Yay. And but no, it's one of those things and I think and what I'm glad when he made that mention about Lord Cabot and he's going to this meditation class and he gets booted out with some other people because he can't imagine it the way he wants, and then I'm not even gonna get into that as far as why he didn't see it the way she thought he should see it. This is for all those people, and you hear this a lot of times for people. And I want to say let's go with the psychic stuff, but it holds true to people that have a real talent for things, and they go to certain people that are supposedly experts, and they get told you're no good, you're not gonna do this. This is not your thing, and it's like sometimes you have to and I'm glad, some experts might be expert, but not really. Like this infallible expertise doesn't exist. In other words, is what I'm saying. Because it's like, just because somebody can't imagine something, you're going to dismiss their psychic abilities. What is that? No, that's just not that the way their mind works. And so, see, if you're ever trying to do something and you go to some type of class and you're like you're being told somehow or the feedback here is like you're not getting it, you're not, or whatever. Don't be don't be disappointed, or don't be like what's the word I'm looking for, don't be thinking, oh, I guess this is not the thing for me because I'm not getting it. Oh, sometimes what was it the other day? Oh, what was it? I can't. Oh my God, what's the name? It'll come to me. The name of this writer, very successful writer. Not successful in the sense of I'm going to write the great American novel, but very successful on Amazon and other things. He's written even when they write for TV. This person's even written when they do follow-ups to like Star Trek and all these types of different well-known genres and or universes. Okay, very, very, very popular, very successful. And I remember so much so that he actually wrote a book about writing in that capacity with the entertainment industry or this or that. And he just, oh, I wish I could remember his name, Marlene. Why am I drawing a blank? Anyway, he describes where when he was getting into the right, he wrote and he was successful, but then he thought, I need to sharpen my skills because this is great. I'm going to take off. Like, I really want to be like. So he goes to all these, I guess these were teachers or experts, like, hey, and they're telling him you didn't do this, that, and he goes, and then my writing went downhill. My pieces weren't getting bought. The articles, the stuff that I was writing, all of a sudden they fell apart. And he goes, and then one day I said, forget it. And he just was writing. He wrote back the way he did, not with the. By the way, his grammar is fine, but I guess the complexity of the instruction he was getting as far as grammar and put it this way and put it that way. And if you're going to do the sentence or the paragraph or the whatever, the continuation or the whatever, he just went back to like, man, I'm just going to write the way I write. And it was fine. If it's not complex. And his stuff started to sell again as far as I guess he was writing articles or stuff. In other words, these people that were teaching him, yeah, they could be considered experts or very knowledgeable, but it still didn't translate into success. And then when he just went back to what he had done all along, which was a simpler method, not as complex, everything was fine. It was back on track. My point being that sometimes we cannot get carried away with experts. Experts are how's this? We can't just go whole hog on experts and think that, especially when they pass judgment on you, on your ability or, if you're any good or, yeah, because everybody looks, or even if they're mentoring you or there's a lot of people always think of, a mentor is going to be somebody that's going to help you or help you go beyond your limitations, self-imposed limitations. Not all mentors are experts. See it's, they, in other words, how's this? Maybe unknowingly, they impose their own limitations on you. They might not have made it, and maybe they might have, but not really that well. And they're still trying to do a copycat of themselves in you. All right. And then you get the thing where the feedback they're giving you is like not encouraging. How's this? And you're like, wow, if this person that's been doing this for this length of time is not really giving me much hope, I guess I'm not. Now you got to think good and hard, because sometimes, either intentionally or unintentionally, depends on the personality, they might be misleading you. Or you figured out a way to do it even better than what their method or whatever it is that they over the way they did it. They're like, let's go into Hollywood land, shall we? Like Star Trek. You remember James T. Kirk? The origin of his notoriety was even from when he was in class that the Kobayashi test, whatever, that he altered it. He thought about outside the box, and he was like, don't do that. But he saw beyond whatever. Sometimes just people out of the gate, they just look at something and they go, well, we could do it this way. Well, nobody's ever done that before. Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's not going to work. Same thing. Same thing. When we try to get guidance, we there's a point that, and by this, that there's other people that, like, hey, oh, you know what, you got to follow your dream, I guess is what I'm saying. And I'm bringing this up now because not only of what he said, but because again, we're going into the new years, and people not only make, um, the resolutions for doing this or stop doing that, but they say, well, you know what, this is the year when I'm going to go ahead and do whatever, fill in the blank. Something that I've been wanting to do. This is the year that I'm going to start to learn karate, or this is the year I'm going to learn how to do whatever, you know. And so, and sometimes people are passionate about something, but time gets away from them. Life gets in the way sometimes, obligations. So now is the time where this is like, I'm going to really do this. Okay, I'm going to really, this thing that I've been dreaming of since maybe I was a teenager of doing it. This is the time I'm going to do it. All right. And they this is they how's this? And I came across this a lot also when I was doing the hypnotherapy, where people would come to you and they were like, whether it was fear of talking or, like presentations or anything like that, or they had done something and, no, I'm not really good at that. I really thought I do like it, but I don't think I'm good at it. I tried it and I wasn't really, it just didn't work. And I was like, okay, what was, okay, how long, why do you say you weren't good at it? No, I went out there and I just wasn't working. How long did you try that? Oh, like maybe a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I'm like, wait a minute. You're going to tell me that you went out there and you did XYZ for 3 weeks or a month or 2 months, depending also on the level of expertise that you needed to actually be good at, and you're saying you're not good at it? What did you expect? What did you expect? Of course you're not good at it. Especially if you're comparing yourself maybe to somebody who's been doing it for 10 years, you know? And sometimes this is the magical thinking that we do. Hey, I want to be good at that, whatever that is. And you see somebody else going and doing it, and you yourself in your mind, you're thinking, man, I love to do this, and I want to be able to do it that way because I know I could blah, blah, blah. And you kind of like forget the in between. Yeah, from wanting to do it, envisioning it, saying, I know I'm going to enjoy it, I enjoy it, but having that level of expertise that maybe you see in somebody else. And the part that you leave out is that, yeah, that person's been doing that for 10 or 15 years. And you're going to, 3 weeks later or a month later, you're running into headwind and you're like, this is not for me. It's like, of course it's not. It is for you if you really want it. But you're going to have to persist, keep doing it, keep doing it, and then little by little, you get better and better and better and better and better and better. And then, before you know it, but, you're going to have to do the, dare I say the word, the practice part. Practice it. So, that's what I'm saying now is it's a weird, or, and I know I'm segueing off the paranormal stuff. You'll have people that have convinced themselves that they want to learn how to do whatever, play golf. I don't know. And they're just convinced that this is the thing, and I've been wanting to do that or play tennis or whatever. And you know what? Or maybe, maybe that's what you wanted to do when you were 25 and now you're 45. Guess what? You're not that same person. You got to let go of that dream because, you're hanging on to it because you made a promise, but the person that you are now, that's not really your thing anymore. It isn't. It's just isn't. You like it. It's not that you dislike it, but that passion that you had, that fire in the belly kind of thing, it's not, you really just don't, it's not there anymore. For whatever reason, life experiences between then and now, there's nothing wrong with saying, you know what? Once upon a time, I thought this is what I really wanted to do. I wanted to be a paraglider. And I realized I don't want to do that anymore. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. It happens. It happens. Or what you imagine something to be is like, wow, I didn't realize I was afraid of heights, that paraglider thing. There's nothing wrong with saying, or especially if if there's expectations on you, especially if when you're younger, like, people are expecting you to do some certain things or fulfill certain roles, and to come to the conclusion that, nope, not for me, and I don't want to do it, and I don't want to pretend that I like it. So I'm not going to waste my time. I'm going to follow something that I really like, that that really makes me happy, that really fulfills me, even if it's bird watching. That's some person that go, what a waste of time. Ugh. Hey, it's like, who cares? If that makes you happy, psh, yeah, go for it. Yeah, I'm telling you, I believe that that part about listening to your inner self, that's very important to leading a happy life as much as possible with all the stuff that's going on. That you really learn to listen to yourself and just, hey, might not make you happy, but it makes me plenty happy. All right, and as long as it's not self-destructive, why not? All right. I studied to become a trailer truck driver, whatever, tractor trailer driver, but really what I like is botany, and I want to raise plants. There you go. One of those deals. Anyway, guys, I hope you liked this interview. I really loved talking to Chuck. It was great. It was fantastic, and listening to his stories and all that great stuff. And yeah, I've got a lot of fantastic guests coming on already lined up. Season 17 of Stories of the Supernatural. Don't forget, go to miamighostchronicles.com, mppelliser.com, sign up for my newsletter. Wherever you find us, whether it's the video version on YouTube, I'm on CloudHub, I'm on Rumble, I'm on BitChute, wherever it is that you find us, subscribe. Same thing with the podcast version. Wherever you've got a certain platform that you use, I'm on all of them. I'm on all of them. Wherever you're going to find me, MP Pelliser, Stories of the Supernatural, just subscribe, because that way you'll get notified of when there's something that's released, premieres. Usually I try to give it a heads up. But again, if you ever want to, I have links to the videos, the different sources, and the podcast versions of any of the shows. You could listen to it for free and no commercial interruptions. All you have to do is either download the MP3 file, or you click on it and you can listen to the podcast version on your browser. Again, without commercial interruptions. Yeah, because that's what comes when when stuff gets distributed. Yeah, you get commercial interruptions. So, again, Happy New Year, and may all your dreams come true. Till next time, take care. You are all wonderful.